What is God up to in Genesis 11? Let's examine this further. Let's think about it. Hey, my name's Justin Harrell. I challenge you to challenge yourself to think about less taught biblical topics. We are currently examining 3 rebellions. We looked at Eden, we looked at Genesis chapter 6, now we're looking at the Tower at Babel.
How do you pronounce it anyways? Is it Babel? 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 What is it?
It's really not that important. If you think the problem was the height of the building, you're going to think God's response was over the top. We know the confusion of the languages had nothing to do with the height of the building because tall buildings are still in construction today with no end in sight. Hey, this reminds me of some really dumb jokes. What's the tallest building in the world? The library. It has the most stories. Did you hear the joke about the roof? Never mind. It's over your head.
Boo! Boo!
Wait. One more. What did one wall say to the other wall? Meet you at the corner.
Get back to the Bible study, please!
If you're not familiar with the Elohim, or you just need a refresher, go back and watch my videos entitled The Elohim, Who Are They? And The Divine Council. A cursory reading of Genesis chapter 11 leads a lot of people to believe that only man and God were involved at the Tower of Babel. But after close scrutiny, you find out that this is not the case. There are a couple clues in Genesis chapter 11 and then some more clues elsewhere in Scripture. So let's take a closer look. Genesis 11 verse 7 says, "Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." Who's God talking to here? It's just like the earlier chapters in Genesis. Let us make man in our image. Man has become like one of us to know good and evil. God is talking to his divine council, the other Elohim with him. Let's go down and confuse the people. But the Most High God is the one who actually does the confusion. Last time I mentioned that when you connect the context of all that has happened up until this point, it becomes clear that man is trying to regain his communication with the other Elohim. Some of man's knowledge had to die in the flood. Man wants this forbidden knowledge back. Many scholars view the building at Babel as a ziggurat. Ziggurats were sacred spaces, where ancient peoples believed heaven and earth met. Ziggurats took the shape of mountains or stacked tiers that were smaller as they went up. God's dwelling is described as a mountain. The Garden of Eden was described as a mountain. The fallen angels come down on the tops of mountains like Mount Hermon. It becomes clear that the purpose of this building was to foster communication with the gods, to bring the divine beings down to earth. Man was cut off from the divine realm, but now they seek to undo this division, to rejoin what was once cut off. Man is constantly trying to reach the divine by going out around the Most High God, constantly trying to conquer what their sin has earned them: death. The irony here is that through the person of Jesus Christ, the Most High God has indeed provided a way to conquer sin and death. There is a way to achieve the divine and be adopted as a child of God. You can have death no longer be your enemy. You can live forever. If we go back to Genesis 10, verses 8 to 10, it says, Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. And if we compare this to Genesis 6:4, there were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men, who were of old, men of renown. There seems to be some sort of connection here. The Nephilim are called mighty men, men of renown, and Nimrod is called a mighty man. a mighty hunter. What does this mean? Well, there's some debate about this, but at the very least, the text is connecting a thread between the activity of the pre-flood world to what is going on here with Nimrod. My opinion is that Nimrod is trying to emulate the activity of the old world now wiped away. He was trying to make a name for himself, just like the old heroes. And it seems he succeeded on that point. Before the flood, we had the sons of God coming down to earth in rebellion. Now, here in chapter 11, we have the sons of man trying to reach up to heaven. Deuteronomy 32:8-9 says, "When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples, according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the place of his inheritance." Now you start to ask yourself some questions here. When did God divide the nations? When did he separate the people? At Babel, of course. But there was no Israel then. So what does the number of people in Israel, a nation that wouldn't yet exist, have to do with any of this? It says, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. That's how the text reads based off the Masoretic text. So this includes all our older translations like the King James Version, New King James Version, the New American Standard Bible, and even the NIV. But discoveries in the Dead Sea Scrolls have now led us to trust the Septuagint reading. Newer translations like the ESV will reflect this. Deuteronomy 32:8 in the ESV says, "When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God." Well, we all know what the sons of God are now.
Yeah, the other divine beings.
The NLT says in verse 8, "When the Most High assigned lands to the nations, when he divided up the human race, he established the boundaries of the peoples according to the number in his heavenly court." And the NET says according to the number of the heavenly assembly. If you stop to think about it, you realize that this actually makes sense now. How do you number the nations according to the number of Israelites? Especially when Israel was not yet a nation at Babel. But see, most of us, when we read the Old Testament, we're just trucking through. We're just bulldozing through to get through our daily reading. Hamran, Eshban, Isman, Sheman, the sons of the sons of Done. This passage here is the final piece in the puzzle that will change your worldview forever. Man is trying to be like divine beings. Man is trying to reach into the divine realm. Divine beings come down with God. God divides man into nations, led by divine beings. What we're learning here is that God gave man over to the leadership of other Elohim. He divvied us up according to the number of the sons of God. They currently run the nations. Let that sink in for a moment. This worldview explains why the world looks the way it does, why there seems to be a lack of justice, why the wicked always seem to prosper. It explains territorial powers that seem to hamper the Christian life. It even explains why Christians deal with different trials in different parts of the world. And then it explains why Israel was so different, so separate, so unique, so important. The Most High God had strict rules for them. Don't be doing what they did at the Tower of Babel. Deuteronomy 4:19 and 20 says, "And beware lest you raise your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars and all the host of heaven, you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them. Things that the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be a people of his own inheritance, as you are this day." We're going to see how this worldview plays out in Scripture. And we'll see how God fulfills Deuteronomy 32 verse 9. All this and much more, so much more to think about.